Last night, the Supreme Court delivered a massive legal victory to the Trump administration and allowed us to continue removing foreign terrorist invaders under the Alien Enemies Act. This was a smackdown to a rogue left-wing, low-level district court judge who have relentlessly tried to stop President Trump from using his core constitutional powers as head of the executive branch and as commander-in-chief. The highest court in the land made it clear that the President of the United States has the power to protect our homeland and forcibly remove foreign terrorists who pose a grave threat to families and communities. Thank you to the Supreme Court for upholding the rule of law and protecting the Constitution. Our message to the monster Tren de Aragua and MS-13 terrorists still hiding illegally inside our country is clear. Deport yourself now, or you will be locked up and sent back to your home country. On another matter, the historic Liberation Day announcement last week by President Trump made it very clear that the era of American economic surrender is over.
Well, that was Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, just moments ago, not missing words when it came to the actual paramilitary troops known as Tren de Agua that we refer to as a gang, and the court decision last night that will allow the Trump administration to continue to deport these criminal and dangerous individuals from the United States under the Alien Enemies Act. Now, Caroline Leavitt also announced in that briefing that El Salvadoran President Bukele will be making a trip to the White House next week, where they will continue to talk, President Trump and he, about the detainment of these gang members in his country of El Salvador, which has been going on, and we actually have some footage of that. Live in that briefing room for us and asking the important questions was our own White House correspondent, Kara Castronova, who joins us now, thankfully. Kara, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Emerald. So,
now,
like you mentioned, I was in the briefing room. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so you actually got to be there and ask her a question. And, I'll just say it was interesting. There was only maybe one other reporter that followed up on that. That's how she led the briefing. That's how she started out. That's how important it is to the Trump administration. And you were one of two to ask a question about this very important topic.
Right. Everybody's still, on the tariff agenda, the mainstream media for the most part. But yes, this is important, obviously. And the Supreme Court case was very important last week, and it really didn't get much media attention. But obviously, you've been doing some breaking news stories about this topic, and I thought it was an important question. So you could check out my question that I asked Caroline Leavitt in the briefing room just about 45 minutes ago.
Let's take a listen.
So President Trump has designated Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization and deported its members, while also moving to restrict Venezuela's oil exports. Is the administration preparing additional military or economic actions against Venezuela and the Maduro regime? And my second question is about Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Is the administration have a comment on her decision to go with the liberals and go actually with the Tren de Araguas? This is the same justice that actually sided against January 6th hostages last year. So is the administration have a comment? Are they disappointed in Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett?
To your first question, I don't have any actions to read out in terms of Venezuela. The president has imposed secondary tariffs on the Maduro regime and on Venezuela in the form of oil, which is obviously going to have a crippling effect on the Maduro regime, and that's the intended effect of this administration. As for the justice you mentioned, as for the Supreme Court, we've made our feelings very clear. We believe this was a massive victory. Certainly, we wish this was a 9-0 decision, because we firmly believe that the president was well within his constitutional authority, and the Supreme Court made that very clear last night, and they put Judge Boasberg in his place. We called on the Supreme Court to rein in these judges who are acting as judicial activists, not real arbiters of the truth and the law, and that's exactly what we saw the Supreme Court do.
So the press secretary there expressing some displeasure in Amy Coney Barrett, who was appointed by Donald Trump in the first administration, and the fact that she sided with those liberal judges. And as you noted, I thought you put it more plainly. She actually sided with Tren de Agua, the actual gang.
Right. Their due process, but not J6ers, which she sided against last year in that big case with the obstruction. People all assumed that it was actually a conservative liberal decision, but it was actually Amy Coney Barrett who went with the liberals and Jackson who went with the conservatives. So that was a surprise to many, but she has made a lot of questionable decisions as a justice, including this one last week, obviously. And I just wanted to be able to draw attention to that because I don't think she's a good justice. And I don't think a lot of people are really understanding the decisions that she's making, siding obviously with foreign terrorists. So it's frustrating, but yes, I was glad to get in a question today, obviously, and inspired Emerald by your work. So I really wanted to bring the focus back to Tren de Aragua today.
Yeah, and again, it'll be a big focus next week when Bukele makes his trip to the White House to talk further about it with President Donald Trump. And of course, we'll have wall-to-wall coverage on that. I do have some more news related to Tren de Agua, but we can't let you go without mentioning a little bit of the news of the day because it does. As one reporter noted, it captured the attention of the nation, and this is the tariff debate. There's been a lot of pressure on President Trump, of course, from Wall Street, some of his buddies from his inner circle. There's been some pushback, right, on these tariffs that he has imposed. But it sounds to me as if he and the administration are very committed to seeing this through.
Right. And Carolyn today said they were doubling down. And she also read a statement about how Chuck Schumer and various other Democrats like Nancy Pelosi really were on the same page as President Trump many years ago. And she said that they should now be thanking him for following through what was their agenda decades ago. But, she also said that they were going to double down more so than ever on these tariffs. So please take a listen to Carolyn and what she said about tariffs today and doubling down.
The president was asked and answered this yesterday. He said he's not considering an extension or a delay. I spoke to him before this briefing. That was not his mindset. He expects that these tariffs are going to go into effect. And you said something very important, Elena, in your question. You said the president has captivated the attention of the world. Absolutely, he has. And it's about time we have a president in the Oval Office who is putting the world on notice and is putting the American people first. And again, is using the leverage of the United States to negotiate good trade deals.
So, yeah, they're not going anywhere. And there's been other hit pieces I've noticed on White House trade advisor Peter Navarro. This is essentially his philosophy, and clearly he's won the debate when it comes with Donald Trump. I do want to say, and I want to share this from yesterday, we had the great Ed Dowd, who is former BlackRock, but now the co-founding member of Finance Technologies. He explained the rationale behind the strategy the White House has employed in regards to tariffs. And this is what he told me about how it's working and why people shouldn't be too worried. Listen.
The formula is basically a goal-seek equation. Basically, we want zero tariffs or zero deficits. We'll start with that number. Come talk to us, and we'll go from there. Because what they could have done is reciprocal tariffs, ticky-tacky, going into all the laws and agreements that have been made over the years. That would have taken a tremendous amount of time. Instead, this is going to bring people to the table. The news flow is already starting to get better. You're going to see more and more countries come.
So Ed Dowd saying
Yeah,
more
it's
countries
definitely
are
something. Oh, sorry, Emerald. There's a little bad connection, but go ahead.
a little bit of a delay. She did say that the phone was ringing off the hook. She said, right?
Yeah, she did, and it is obviously the truth and what the obvious agenda of the Trump administration is for these countries to come and be an example. Like she mentioned, Israel and Netanyahu yesterday should be a model. Now their tariffs down to zero. There was a call with South Korea today that I was reading about where the president spoke about these things and possibly bringing the tariffs down there. So multiple countries are now coming forward, like Japan as well, and saying that they want to work out a deal with the president. So these are all the positive things. Everything is going in a positive direction. I just think it's going to take time. But like Carolyn Levitt mentioned, this has been something that Democrats have actually been calling for a long time now. It wasn't until Trump came in and he started implementing them. Now they're up in a fury. But this is something that many presidents have wanted to do for a very long time. And President Trump really is the only one that had the steel backbone to do it because it is perceived to be risky. But he's doing it and he's doubling down, tripling down. And, I think most Americans are willing really to take a few hits for a few months or however long it takes to get everything back onto an even playing field.
Yeah, and it seems like Rasmussen sent me a poll. They just done a survey of the American people. It seems like it is actually playing quite well with the public, even if Ed Dowd was concerned about the messaging yesterday from the White House that perhaps they hadn't done enough, but it seems like it is overall, the public is, warming up to it. We'll try to feature those numbers for our audience tomorrow. I know you're in a hurry. You're waiting to go into the president's executive order signing on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. That is the coal industry. I'm a coal miner's daughter. I'm going to talk more about that in just a moment. But Kara Castronova, thank you so much for your excellent work, as always.
Thank you. Thank you, Emerald.
With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with airwaterhealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Air Water Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from airwaterhealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at airwaterhealing.com.
In a Real Lindell TV exclusive, I've obtained the briefing that was provided to the Trump national security officials regarding Tren de Agua and the Venezuelan government. Now, this is the briefing that was provided to national security officials in the Trump administration, to include Tulsi Gabbard's office at the Director of National Intelligence. President Trump designated Tren de Agua, as we've been talking about, as a foreign terrorist organization on January 20th, since it is, quote, conducting irregular warfare and undertaking hostile actions in the USA. Well, you have to keep in mind, okay, when you heard Caroline Leavitt talking about that from the briefing room podium today, and she was quite forthright in how she described them. This is not a street gang, okay? It's the paramilitary wing of Venezuela's narco-terrorist regime. That's why Donald Trump ordered the deportation of its members using the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. The members of Tren de Agua are essentially foreign soldiers. They're operating right here in our country in secret. Its members, according to this briefing, moved through a few foreign nations before entering the USA illegally through safe houses in 20 American cities. As you can see from this graphic here, Tren de Agua has come to the U.S. in large numbers. They're in multiple states. They're here to undermine our public safety and support the Maduro regime's goal of destabilizing democratic nations in the Americas, especially here in the USA. TDA terrorists are supported and trained by 300 military intelligence officers to engage in riots, sabotage, disinformation, espionage, social conflict, armed aggression, all right here within our own borders. You see here the chief of these 300 intel officers is one Antonio Alvarez. He's a member of the largest cartel in the world, which controls Venezuela, Cartel del Sol. He's a link between them and the smaller cartels and the Maduro regime. He runs this operation from a bunker on his ranch in Venezuela. He runs Tren de Agua while also running the largest drug cartel in the world. Well, who is that? That's the officials in the Venezuelan regime. So that's right. Narco-terrorists are in charge of the entire nation. They run the government and the cartel at the same time. And that's why, one reason amongst many, that President Trump and his administration are so focused on that. And joining us now is the great Patrick Byrne. He is the star of the movie. It's a docuseries, actually, so you get three for the price of one, The Enemy Within, which I recommend you watch. I'll tell you how to watch it a little bit later. It's good to see you, Patrick.
Good to be back on your show, Emerald. I love your journalism. I read you, and all the important people I know read you too. So keep it up.
Oh, thank you. That I'm very flattered. Patrick, so I told my audience that we have received the exclusive briefing that was provided to the Trump administration that helped them shape their strategy on Venezuela, especially as it relates to Tren de Aragua. And I was hoping that you would help walk us through it because you know it better than anyone. I just do want to clarify that what Justice Amy Coney Barrett actually sided with, if we can pull up the description, as this was described to the Trump administration, right? About Tren. This is who she sided with, liberal judges. Tren de Aragua is a transnational organized criminal group controlled and sponsored by the Venezuelan regime. This is the kind of activities they conduct, Patrick. Kidnapping, extortion, drug trafficking, robbery, killing, illegal mining, and I think both you and I would also add election interference and engineering to that. That's not even on this list, but we'll add that ourselves. We'll pencil that one in. The thing about this gang is that they're under the control of essentially the Venezuelan government, because it really starts at the top with Nicolas Maduro and Cartel del Sol, right?
Yeah.
Like, here's the key players.
Huh. That's correct. Yeah, Tren de Aragua, the thing to know, it's a gang, it's a street level gang, but it's a gang that's at the control of really the vice president of first thing to know is the government of Venezuela is the mafia. The mafia is the government. Venezuela is where mafia becomes nation state. So stop thinking of them like normal politicians. Secondly, they have their secret police, of course, but they have the thinker bees, the real intellectuals within the regime, is a brother-sister couple. It's a guy who's a psychiatrist. His name's Jorge Rodriguez. His sister is the vice president now, kind of slated to become the president. And they went to a prison in the state of Aragua, the province in Venezuela, to the toughest jail there, and made a deal with his prison gang. And this happens a lot in Latin America. Prison gangs become their own mafias and become a life on their own. So they act as the enforcers for the regime across Venezuela. They've also been trained in terrorism in the south of Venezuela, and they've been in sabotage and such. They've been infiltrated through Colombia to Nicaragua to this Sinaloan cartel took them over and brought them into the United States, thousands of them. That's your good news for the day.
That is good news. I do want to go more into detail of the structure. So we talked a lot about Cartel del Sol in the last few weeks. We have learned, under FBI investigation. They were not previously talked about as much as even Tren de Aragua. But when you look at the terrorist criminal structure, right, when you were talking about the terrorist side of this, they're really at the top of the hierarchy. And then you have Tren de Aragua, and you have these 300 members of an intelligence officers team. Can you explain that intelligence officers team aspect of that?
Yes. It's like a deep state it's the deep state, the most loyal, it's sabotage. Like I say, the south of Venezuela has been turned into a bunch of terrorist training camps. And so there's some 300 member support team who's trained to come infiltrate the United States. And they become really, I think that they're the master group. The Tren de Aragua are the cells. There's a cellular terrorist structure of 5 or 6 terrorists in a cell led by one guy. And then their supply chain, so to speak, is that group of 300. And there's several thousand of those terrorist cell leaders within the country. And those people would probably report to, in some sense, or not even, it's not that kind of a hierarchy, but they would get support from and logistics and so on and so forth from this group. So it's a government sponsored, it's a blurry line. The point is it's a blurry line between the Venezuelan government and this street mafia called Tren de Aragua. And somewhere in there, you've got 300 men trained by the Military Intelligence Bureau, conducted at the National Police Training Center. So those are government agents of some kind, and trained by. And by the way, Cuba has exquisite intelligence and services. So these are Venezuelan government trained officers who are being infiltrated along with these thousands of these Tren de Aragua terrorist cell leaders, and then along with probably 20,000 actual foot soldiers. So you're always having these three groups, like you always situation like 3 groups even if you're talking about Al Qaeda or something. You got the generals, you have the captains, and you have the foot soldiers. That's basically how these sort of clandestine networks structure. And that what you just described there is one of those sections. It's the command and control section infiltrated into the country. So this language is important. The reason I've been so tediously showing why there's this connection between the Venezuelan government and this street gang is we got to look at the actual language of the law that was passed in 1798. Look at the section, an act respecting alien enemies, section 1. And if you go into the first sentence there, you can probably blow up for your audience. The first sentence there, I'm going to gloss, be it enacted by the Senate and House of the U.S. that whenever there shall be a declared war between the United States and any foreign nation or government, or any invasion or predatory incursion shall be perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the United States by any foreign nation or government, then the president has such and such is empowered to throw them out. Would you agree that those clauses up front are met by the description we just walked through of the Tren de Aragua?
Obviously, obviously, the majority of the Supreme Court justices agreed as well.
By 5-4. By 5-4.
Yeah.
I mean,
barely,
that should be 9.
Barely.
How that the president doesn't have. No, we have to understand we're at war. We're at World War III. It doesn't involve tanks and airplanes. So we don't understand it as war. We're giving it the confused puppy look. We got to understand we're at a war. Venezuela has been a very key player in the war, and they have subverted us. They've paid billions through Soros to subvert us. They subverted our election equipment. There's all kinds of spies within our government. And in addition, such as Ambassador Manuel Rocha, whom we've spoken of before, and this whole Tren de Aragua thing, it's not just some random street gang that has shown up and decided to come to America. They were infiltrated, trained by the Venezuelan government, sent through their allies, Colombia, Nicaragua, and the Sinaloan cartel, and distributed. So this is a government action. We're up against, in World War III, the government of Venezuela is our 5-meter target. And so, of course, that language authorizes Trump, empowers Trump to do what he's doing. And, there are going to be some mistakes. That's the nature of war. It means there's a different standard. You would have, in a normal legal situation, there's all this due process and so on and so forth. That might not apply to a warfare situation in the same way. And we don't have time to have hearings for the 1 million people that need to be thrown out.
That's an excellent point. I also want to ask you about another aspect of this, Patrick. It takes people and logistics in other countries. So particularly as they transited these gang members, these paramilitary troops, which I refer to them into the country, you have figures in countries like Colombia, Nicaragua, and Mexico. Will the Trump administration address that with these countries, these 3 countries as well, the aiding and abetting of this, invasion, this military action against the United States?
Yeah, it's called an act of war. They took part in an act of war. They cooperated in an act of war. Now,
so how should Trump address this?
I think he should address it. He'll have some creative yet aggressive way of doing it. I think that it's complicated by something. I sent you that clip, I believe, of Maduro or Jorge Rodriguez threatening the one of him saying, "Hey, don't blame us. Biden told us to send these people. Check with your FBI offices in Colombia and in Panama. Biden instructed us to send these people." Did I send you that clip?
Yeah, and we played it the last time you were on the show, and people were fascinated by that. People did not know that. That got 1 million views, Patrick.
Oh, wow. So my question, my answer to you is, I mean, it's an act of war, except for the fact that our president told him to. So if you really want to be legalistic about it, I'm not sure. the truth is they're all puppets of someone back in the East Asia. They're all Biden was a puppet of them. Venezuela's puppets is a strong word, but they're all co-conspirators. So this is really ultimately it's a Chinese problem. This has been an active war by China, and it's a miracle that they didn't make it. So,
Yeah,
but
it
anyway,
is.
this is, I mean, to answer to your question, should we be retaliating against Mexico? Everything has to be made revealed. Everything has to be revealed. But legally, I'm not even sure if it is an act of war because our own commander in chief apparently told them to do it.
That does throw a wrench in it a bit, but still there was an invasion, and it would continued into this, presidency, which this president did not say that. So he's obviously still going to take action. I do want to just look at what was recommended to the Trump administration. This team that briefed the Trump national security officials did make several recommendations that included, which some they've already done, designating Cartel del Sol and Tren de Aragua, if I can get it out today, as a foreign terrorist group. They've done that. That's been, supported by every entity, including the ODNI, DOJ, and Treasury. They recommended to create a DOJ Venezuelan task force to look into the transnational organized crime. That's important to designate them as transnational organized crime groups, which they're doing, but they recommended setting up a DOJ task force to investigate that. Authorizing the use of the Panama Express Strike Force, OCDETF, out of Tampa to address this, and establishing a dedicated counterintelligence element to track down and detain Tren de Aragua intelligence support teams inside of the U.S. Patrick, I had individuals express concern about our current counterintelligence capabilities. Do you think it's getting better when it comes to this issue?
This is one of my Dolphin speakers behind me sneaking in.
A little
First,
cameo.
I have to ask. I didn't send that to you, did I?
No.
Oh, good. Because I want to be clear. I'm not an advisor to nobody, anybody.
Yep.
I don't claim any special nothing. Well, what I will tell you, from what little I know about Uncle Sam's response, I want to tell you, I'm suddenly on the side of they got it. People, wheels are in action. Wheels are spinning. People are in action. Now, normally, when somebody says that these days, everybody says, "Oh my God, they've sold out. And they're just trying to make us stall us some more." And I'm saying, as a jihadi, as the original jihadi in this, I am cognizant enough of what Uncle Sam is doing that I'm sleeping better than I have in 4 years. I really am, because there's massive attention from the highest levels and on this issue. Yeah, so you can be sure, like everybody in government, every group you've heard of in government is part of trying to is cooperating to unscramble what happened here and how this works.
Well, Patrick Byrne, that wouldn't be happening without, in large part, due to your efforts. People are fascinated by you, and
Concerned citizen.
And your story has been turned into a docuseries. General Mike Flynn was part of that effort, and you can watch that now. It's a 3-part series available when you go to enemywithindocuseries.com. Enemywithindocuseries.com. It is very entertaining. I am a very critical spectator, and I loved it. So, Patrick, I encourage my audience to go check that out. Watch that, and then you'll have, if you haven't seen it yet, you'll also just have a whole new take.
Were you a little shocked? Were you a little shocked anywhere?
Not a little bit, but I've known you for years now, and I'm like, I could totally see this. We were joking before the segment started. You could be the new face of that Dos Equis beer campaign, the even more interesting man in the world. The new most interesting man in the world. Patrick Byrne, it's always when you stop by and chat with us, and so informative. Until
I look
next time.
forward to doing it in person someday, Emerald. Thanks for keeping up.
Definitely.
And I encourage everyone to tune in on your Twitter feed. That's where the biggest story, the story of the century or bigger, is being doled out on your Twitter
That's
feed.
right. Yeah, stay tuned to my Twitter feed. Thanks so much, Patrick. Good to see you.
Bye-bye, Emerald.
Have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? Well, I recently saw a video he made and I was shocked. That guy's amazing and he's staying active well into his 80s. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, can work out longer, and even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by just making one change. He says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing too, and she's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger, her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. Chuck made a very special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/Lindell. It will change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/Lindell. You won't believe how simple it is.
Now, beginning 15 years ago, the Venezuelan regime, first under socialist leader Hugo Chavez and now under Nicolas Maduro, started purchasing large numbers of the Russian-made SA-24 Eagle-S man-portable air defense system, or that MANPAD, is what we usually refer to them. Today, Venezuela has an arsenal that numbers around 5,000 of these weapons, according to a 2019 article in the trade publication The War Zone. They wrote, quote, compared to older variants, this MANPAD has a longer range and a significantly larger warhead. Its maximum range of 20,000 feet is more than 5,000 greater than that of the iconic American FIM-92, the Stinger MANPADs. The exact speed of the S model is not publicly available, but one would imagine the designers would not have wanted it to be slower than the average speed of earlier types, which was approximately 1,300 miles per hour. The Stinger's average flight speed is 1,600 miles per hour. Now, this is important because U.S. intelligence has feared for more than a decade that the Maduro regime of Venezuela could give those weapons over to their allies in the drug cartels. Now we know they run the cartels, right? And that these weapons would be used to attack the United States or any U.S. military or law enforcement groups who are deployed to counter the drug cartels. Now, as we've proven beyond a shadow of a doubt here at The Absolute Truth, Venezuela's regime exercises control over a variety of transnational criminal networks, including the Cartel of the Suns, Cartel del Sol, as well as the dreaded prison gang, Tren de Agua. Now, just imagine what Venezuela's otherwise pathetic military might accomplish if they gave these Russian-built MANPADs to their cartel allies. I'm now joined by Victor Avila. He's a man who has an intimate knowledge of our open and broken southern border with Mexico. He's a former ICE agent and the author of the compelling book, Agent Under Fire, A Murder and a Manifesto. Victor, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
I know you're a busy man these days, as everything you've warned about for so long is finally getting addressed. I think the Venezuelan threat was probably one we didn't take very seriously because we look at it as a failed regime, a narco state. What is your reaction to how aggressively President Donald Trump is taking on the Maduro regime and the cartels in Venezuela?
Well, first, I got to start off by saying that you are spot on with the description of Tren de Aragua, the Cartel de los Soles that I've been talking about for a long time, that nobody mentions them. But this is the threat, and the Trump administration recognizes that threat. The global and the foreign policy threat that this regime we face in the United States against. Why? Who's Venezuela? Who are their friends? Their best friends are Mexico, Cuba, Iran, Russia, Hezbollah, and they have been using Mexico to enter our country. Yes, by members of Tren de Aragua and others, allowed completely in by the Biden administration. And now, sometimes people question, well, how could that happen? Well, it happened because they allowed them in. I heard today that CBP One app is finally going to be all the people that received that benefit of coming in. They're going to find themselves with absolutely no status. I knew that from the beginning because that was completely illegally issued to them, and to some people, obviously not to their own fault, because anybody would have taken advantage of that. But who takes advantage of it? The bad guys do as well, and that's why they made their way into our community. So that we're talking about this is so important, because this goes far beyond illegal immigration. We're talking about national security at this point.
We are, and I'm glad that it's finally making its way into the national conversation, because when you look at the Venezuelan regime and their influence, it's not just drug trafficking, right? It's not just money laundering. It's human trafficking. It's also, and we don't get into this now, but I'm going to get into it in much greater detail in the coming weeks. It's also election interference. It's the elections. It is a very sophisticated, complex network. So when you understand who they really are, then of course, when I talk about these man pads and them having that kind of technology in Venezuela, we really have to apply it to the national security threat that it is, right?
That's right, and you could see the shift. So many years and actually decades that we concentrated in the Middle East, the Trump administration is now finally taking the focus to Central and South America, where the threat is really facing us. And one of the things is it's just mind-boggling to me that people in the U.S., especially the left and judges and sanctuary cities and other people, want to protect these individuals. But if I just change the name from Tren de Aragua to ISIS, would they be, acting any differently? Well, I'm here to tell you they're exactly the same. As a matter of fact, they're more dangerous, because they've actually killed more Americans, these cartels, through the Mexican cartels, through China, with fentanyl, the human trafficking, and everything else, more than any other terrorist organization combined. And so this is where the threat is, and it exists. And you talk about the weapons, you talk about the relationship that Venezuela has with these very, very, our adversaries, right? Our China and our other enemies around the world. But you mentioned something earlier, and this goes back not just to the Maduro regime, but Hugo Chavez. They call them Chavistas, who are Hugo Chavez sympathizers that came and infiltrated our country with that ideology. And we know that ideology is beyond socialist, communist type ideology of the destruction of the American people, the destruction of our American way of life. And we had to unfortunately see these, Lake and Riley acts and crimes and many, many others that we had to kind of wake up and say, listen, this is why we're facing this threat, taking over apartment complexes, committing serious crimes. By the way, not just against U.S. citizens, but even against their own communities, because these guys come back, they get deported, they come back into the U.S., they live right there, they're pedophiles, they're sex offenders, they're serious violent criminals. And even the legal community, the legal Venezuelans, that tell me all the time, Victor, we're not like them. Please tell the people that not all Venezuelans are bad. We understand that. And they taint the legal person that's come here the right way. And they want them out of their communities way as much as we do, because they can't get out of their communities. They can't let their kids play in the street because they have a pedophile living next door to them. So this has really gotten to every corner of our communities, where local police departments are the ones that, when I go around the country speaking to them, are facing it at the local level when they have the dead body in front of them, directly related to not just Venezuela, but the combination of them with the Mexican cartels, because that's how they finance their activities with the drug trafficking, all the other trades, the oil, the avocado, the limes, and everything else, the steel trade, everything that they infiltrate and extort in Mexico is helping them advance their agenda in the U.S.
Victor, you brought up the Lake and Raleigh Act. I'm glad you did, because tomorrow I understand that Angel Moms are going to be joining Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem at the headquarters at DHS headquarters, and she'll be talking to the public live from there. So we'll be bringing that hopefully to our audience in this hour. I've met many of the Angel Moms, and it's absolutely gut-wrenching and heartbreaking what they go through, and the fact that so many people in power, so many of our elected leaders, and so many in the media don't care about them and their stories. They're treated like, stepchildren. Victor, real quick, because you know these kind of operatives really well. The Trump administration taking these kind of aggressive actions that they've not experienced before. There's not been this kind of pushback on Cartel del Sol, especially, right? And they are very powerful, and they're so often not to be named, right? Not their names are not to be spoken. Do you expect them to ramp up? How do you expect them to try to retaliate, or because of the weight of the Trump administration, will they? I mean, how will this go?
That's a great question. And I'm going to tell you, because of the activity of the Department of Defense now joining with DHS, and you've seen the activity of our military down at the border. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of intel gathering, the good intel. And when you gather good intelligence, the best, you don't end there. You actually act on the intelligence. But that is my biggest fear, that these animals are going to want to retaliate, not only against our law enforcement, but maybe against our civilians. They have no regard for human life. They don't care how we voted, left or right. They're here to destroy us and kill us. And that's my biggest concern, especially the ones that are in our country. One thing at the border, and we have that control, that's one thing, and what we could do outside of our borders. But the ones that are in here, and they will want to, set an example of killing a police officer or a civilian, because we know that that's what they're capable of. And that is my biggest fear. And I want to say something about the victims. I'm a big victim advocate. I don't want anyone to be a victim of any crime. And I don't understand how we cannot come together in that this situation alone. This is a solution that benefits everyone, by the way, when you have a safer community, when you get rid of these animals from our community. So unfortunately, we have to fight the Denvers and the Chicagos of the world in our country, keeping us from doing that, keeping Tom Homan and the others from making us safe, when they know that everybody would benefit. Our children would be safer. But let's not forget about the victims, because there's so many of them, just like you. I've met them, the fentanyl, the ones that lost a loved one to fentanyl poisoning, especially the ones that lost their loved ones to a violent crime at the hands of an illegal alien. It's intolerable to me. I want that to end.
Yeah, we all do. We all do. On this side, it just seems to make sense. And as our White House correspondent, Kara Castronova, in the White House briefing today noted when talking to Caroline Levitt, she specifically clarified that Justice Amy Coney Barrett was in essence siding with a terrorist organization over the American people, over the safety of the American people. And that's extremely disappointed, as Caroline Levitt also said the administration is disappointed in her as well. Victor, Avila, we will have lots to talk about over the next few weeks, because based on our sources, there's lots more action coming as it relates to Venezuela. And that's very good to know that there's good, as you shared here on the show, there's good intel gathering actually happening at the southern border. Thank you so much, Victor. Always good to see you.
Thank you.
File this one under personnel as policy. In a somewhat strange and puzzling move, newly minted FBI Director Kash Patel has decided to promote this man here, FBI agent Steve Jensen, to be the new head of the very swampy Washington, D.C. field office. Now, our next guest, Stephen Baker of The Blaze, has done some yeoman's work uncovering why this is an abysmal choice. As part of his expose, Baker interviewed Mike Howell. You know his name. He's from the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project, who said this of Jensen. Howell said, quote, Steve Jensen should not have a job at the FBI. He was on the bleeding edge of some of the worst abuses of the FBI. The coordinated pushback on those calling him out is unfortunate, but it's already had to be backtracked on key points. Baker also interviewed former FBI National Security Intelligence Supervisor George Hill, who's been on this show previously. Hill detailed how Jensen zealously investigated J6ers despite lacking evidence. Jensen publicly said this of J6ers, quote, I don't give a blank. They're, I'm not going to say that, terrorists, and we're going to round them all up. Terrorists. The only one who's doing the terrorizing were FBI goons like Steve Jensen. The real questions that must be answered are, why on earth would Kash Patel promote this man, and how will this impact the J6ers who are still being abused by our very weaponized non-judicial system? The Heritage Foundation's Mike Howell tweeted this to Steve Baker as to who was behind the elevation of Jensen, Hal attributed it to Jim Jordan. That does not surprise me. Probably doesn't surprise you either. Join us now as the Blaze's Steve Baker. Not only is he a fantastic journalist, but he was also subject to the political persecution of the Biden DOJ. Steve, what the heck is going on?
Emerald, this is one of the most confounding things I've ever had to dive into. I mean, first of all, I'll just state right from the beginning, myself, most of all of the Blaze hosts and writers and reporters, we all gave our full-throated and enthusiastic endorsement to the nominations of both Kash Patel and Dan Bongino as deputy director. And we gave our endorsements there. We were applauding at the confirmations of their appointments. And we have high hopes, and we still have high hopes. But this is the most confounding thing that has come out of their tenure so far is this appointment of Stephen Jensen to the top position at the Washington field office, ostensibly the most important of all the FBI field offices in the country, the highest profile of all of them, certainly. And of course, the one that led the weaponization against even the most innocent of all the J6ers over the last 4 years. So this is a tough one to take, but it all begins with the fact that this was done and this appointment and hire was made under the cover of darkness. The email that we were leaked and that was sent out to some 2,500 FBI employees there in D.C. was sent out over a week and a half ago. And you can't send out an email to 2,500 employees to any agency in D.C., regardless of whether it's and this was not a top secret email by any means. It wasn't classified by any means. But you can't send out anything to 2,500 employees in D.C. and expect that it's not going to be leaked. Well, on Friday of last week, the New York Times revealed his appointment, and even the New York Times rightfully raised the question. Wouldn't the J6 community have a problem with this? The next day, Gateway Pundit came out and said that it was fake news that they had from a highly placed source of the FBI that this was fake news. Well, I had a copy of the email, and we decided to transcript that and put that out on my Twitter feed, on our X feed on Sunday afternoon. So we put that out with an explanation of who Jensen is, why we have a problem with this appointment, and the verification through the email, the internal email at the FBI from Philip Bates, one of the high-ranking officials there. And that was our approach to it. And then just boom, it exploded from there. And I think what we're seeing right now is I don't want to call it a civil war, but it's a very negative divide on the MAGA, the J6 community camp, the right side, those who have supported Trump, those who have supported Patel and Bongino's appointments, because you have two issues here. You have somebody who's demonstrably a bad character in the J6 prosecution history, in every way demonstrable, and he led it. He was the head of the National Terrorism Task Force. But the bottom line is that there's the other half of the community is saying, well, we trust Dan, we trust Kash. Let's just wait and follow the plan. Let's trust the plan, and that's where the divide is right now.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Steve, because I can't say that I've had another issue that I've covered that's probably been more divided amongst people I respect, and it's very interesting. I'm having people who you and I both know and probably both have mutual respect for, who are telling me this is not that bad. He's a good guy. He's a family man. Though apparently, allegedly, he was called the Tomas Torquemada of Torquemada of J6 investigations. That's a reference to the famous, infamous leader of the Spanish Inquisition.
Right.
Telling me that this is good, that this is really what has to happen. Just be patient. And maybe I could have bought that had they not rolled it out in the way that you described. At first, they denied it. they typically put out press releases for this
That's
kind
right.
of appointment. It's a big deal. A press
Mm-hmm.
release is prepared and goes out the same day. They did it under, like you said, the cloak of darkness. Then they try to deny it. And then they spun it into, oh, but this is really good and you should be happy about that. Now, they never do that when it's actually good for us.
Except that they haven't actually explained it yet. And when we say they, it hasn't come from the FBI yet. It hasn't come from an FBI official spokesperson. It hasn't come. That's correct. It hasn't come from Dan Bongino. It hasn't come from Kash Patel. As a matter of fact, as I said, this was announced to the employees of the FBI in D.C. a week and a half ago. He showed up for work last Monday. We know that for a fact. He was seen in the building, and then on Friday, the New York Times made posted their story. Gateway Pundit called it fake news on Saturday. I released what I did on Sunday. Our story that you just put up on the screen there came out this morning, and we've still yet to hear now, a week and a half later, anything from them. And as you said, normally an appointment of this high of a profile gets at least a press release or some sort of acknowledgement, and we got nothing, and we still have nothing from the FBI. And when we reached out, Blaze Media, when we reached out to the FBI, the only thing that they said was, we refer you to the Washington Field Office website. And this was late yesterday afternoon. And we saw that they had added Stephen Jensen's name as the assistant director in charge of the WFO in FBI Washington Field Office. And that was it. And then they also said, we have no further comment. And yet the only thing that we've seen posted so far today and yesterday from Kash Patel is, posts about a couple of other arrests that they've made, the intramural hockey matches between the various field offices in the FBI, things like that, but no commentary whatsoever on this. Now, Sunday, Dan Bongino posted some cryptic kind of X post in which he said, basically, I know that you are getting impatient. Please trust us about what's going on behind the scenes. We're going to get there. There's a lot going on. I can't ask you to trust me, but trust me. And that's basically what he said. And it was really strange because he was obviously referring to this without identifying this issue in particular. So my point being is that even when Stephen Jensen was appointed special agent in charge of the Columbia, South Carolina field office, a state three straight states down from Washington, D.C., he got a press release on that one, but silence on this one. And even after the controversy has blown up with millions of tweets and retweets and reposts, or whatever we call them these days, there's still no commentary coming from the FBI, except, as you said, from certain influencers who seem to be acting as their press secretary.
That's the same thing that happened with the Epstein file debacle, right? There was that kind of influence. It was influence or information operations. Look, Steve, Bongino's asking us to be patient. The last question, we got about 30 seconds. How long are we supposed to give them before we see some kind of significant action?
I don't know. Look, we still want to believe that Bongino and Patel have the best interests at heart, and that they haven't been co-opted by the deep state, and nobody's holding a gun to their head and threatening their families or something something nefarious or conspiratorial of that nature. We don't want to believe that. But this is an appointment that confounds us all. All of us that know what Jensen's part was in the prosecution. We're talking about from the investigation to the prosecution to the SWAT raids on nonviolent misdemeanor defendants whose lives were destroyed in this process. He led that action, and he's appointed to one of the top positions in the agency. It just makes no sense. We wanted Kash Patel to do what he said he was going to do in multiple interviews and in his book, that he was going to turn the Hoover Building into a museum to the deep state, and that is not happening right now, not yet.
No, and we thought it was going to be fast, swift action. Look, we'll await their response and we'll provide it to our audience when we get it. Steve Baker, thank you so much for this in-depth investigative reporting. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Emerald.
The energy workers and the coal miners in the area that I'm standing on, and there's a lot of weight on this platform, so I don't know what's going to happen. I hope it's structurally designed for you guys. I don't know. But we have just really well-deserving, great American patriots, and it's such an honor to be here and making such a big move, such a bold move in energy.
That was President Trump earlier today from the White House signing an executive order that would promote the coal industry. As a coal miner's daughter, I have to say thank you, President Trump. My daddy, Robert, felt that as a coal miner, he was doing America's part to make America great. And he was. He was a great American and a great coal miner and a wonderful dad, as President Trump himself noted on the passing of my father when he tweeted his respects to my daddy. I'll never forget that, and I'll always appreciate President Trump doing that, and I appreciate what he did today for my coal community in Southwest Virginia, and that's the absolute truth.